Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to wait a moment as students and families continue to make their way into the room. So, hoping everybody's having a nice Tuesday. All right. So it seems like we are starting to slow down a bit with folks coming in. Hi, everybody. Just wanted to start out with some introductions. My name is Jake Goldblum. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Associate Director for Global Network First Year Programs, working specifically with London Scholars. So just to note that this is the introductory session for the visa process for London Scholars specifically. So it is for the London Scholars Program. So if you're not a member of the London Scholars Program or a family member of a London Scholars student, this is not the session for you. So just wanted to make that note ahead of time. Also wanted to make the note that the session is being recorded and will be sent to students following the session, and will also be added to a YouTube playlist where we will have all of our visa information and webinars over the course of the summer. Similarly, so this is primarily an informational session, and we will answer some questions on the back end as possible, but we will have specific Q&A sessions hosted by the visa compliance team over the course of the summer. So you can take a look at those in your application status check portal and register through your ASC, your application status check. So we will have an opportunity for you to ask additional questions as the summer goes on. So don't worry, not the last opportunity to chat with the visa team. And then, of course, our visa team will share information about getting in touch with their team directly. So again, no worries about any of that. Everybody is right on time as far as the process is concerned. And then, so I'll turn it over to the visa team in a moment. And then once the presentation is complete, we will wrap up. I'll come back, we'll wrap up. And then, like I mentioned, soon after, in a few days, to a week or so, we'll be following up with a recording of the session. So with all of that being said, I want to turn it over to Poppy on our visa team.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Poppy Kirkbride, and I am the Senior Visa Compliance Officer here at NU London. And I'm here with my colleague Rita. Rita, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. So I'm also a Visa Compliance Officer at Northeastern University London here at the Visa team. I work with Poppy.
Thank you, Rita. Perfect. So today, just like Jake said, today is going to be an information session. It will cover the entire process in a lot of detail. We found that this is helpful because when you have the recording, you'll be able to access different parts of the process when you're there throughout the summer. And it will also be a video version on YouTube, which has timestamps to each section. So don't worry about taking notes, screenshots, anything like that. It will be a lot of information, but we like to give you a good overview so you can think about anything you need to plan ahead for. And then you'll have recordings accessible to you throughout the whole process. So I hope that's really helpful for you all today. And of course, there'll be information at the end for how to reach out to us directly. So we're going to kick off, and today we're going to be talking about the UK student visa. So this is actually the name of the visa that London scholars will need to obtain in order to study at NU London in September. So we're going to start to talk about the process, and specifically the CAS process. So the CAS process will come before you apply for your visa. So what is a CAS? So once you've paid your enrollment deposit, which I'm sure you all have already, you'll need to obtain a confirmation of acceptance for studies, which we call a CAS, in order to apply for your UK student visa to study on the programme. So the CAS process involves providing documentation to our team here in London that meets the UKVI visa requirements, and we'll be showing you all the documentation that you need and how you can meet those requirements. So you'll be providing the documentation via our system called CAS Shield. You'll be sent an invitation to your Northeastern email address soon. So once you've received your invitation, you'll be able to register and begin uploading the required documents. The information today will allow you to start collecting and preparing any documents you can, and then you'll be able to upload them to CAS Shield once that invitation has gone out. Then, after all of your required documents have been uploaded to CAS Shield, the visa compliance team will issue you a CAS and provide you with full support throughout the visa process. When you complete your UK student visa online application, you'll need to provide your CAS number, which will be on your CAS statement, and use the information which is provided. So we're going to show you a CAS statement, explain everything that it entails, just so that you're familiar with the process before it begins. So this is what a CAS statement looks like on the right-hand side. So this is what the information that we provide to the government, and it's basically a statement saying that we are happy to sponsor the student. It provides all the information that we've already given to the government about the student and the course, so mainly passport information, course information, previous qualification, and what has already been paid towards the course. So for example, your deposit or any fees that you, any tuition fee payments you make will also be included on this statement. So this is all the information it will include. It's really important to note that you should not make a student visa application online now. You cannot actually make one until you've received your CAS, although it will let you access it. You will not get a visa approved without a CAS. Your application will be refused, and this may have an impact or a delay on your next application. So if anyone's started an online application, please delete it. It's really important that you go through the process of the CAS before you make your student visa application. So first, I want to give you all some really kind of key headline information. If you have a British or Irish valid passport, you do not require a visa. So anybody that already has a British or Irish passport or is in the process of getting one now and will have one before the start of September, you will not require a visa. You will need to send us a copy of this passport to our email address, just so that we're aware that you don't require the visa. But all other nationalities who are not British and Irish and don't have that passport will have to go through the UK student visa process and the CAS process with NU London. The visa compliance team does not issue your student visa. So the UKVI, which is the UK government and visas and immigration, will issue your visa. However, we issue the CAS. So we say that we're going to sponsor your visa, and we also provide advice and support throughout the process. You should begin the process as early as possible after you receive your invite to ensure that you can get your visa in time to start the course. You need to prioritize the student visa application process over the summer. And we understand that students and families have vacation plans, but it's really important that you engage in the process early enough to make arrangements around those plans. So as soon as you are on CAS Shield, you'll be able to speak to your visa compliance officer, and you can inform them of your travel dates, and they can assist you in advising you when you'll be able to make your application, and if you need to kind of make any adjustments to your plans. It's really important that the visa is prioritized in order to start the course on time. Do not travel to London until you have your visa. So please don't come early before you've got the visa. You can't enter the country as a visitor and enroll on the London Scholars Programme. So please make sure you have your visa before you arrive. If you do not have the correct visa, you will not be able to enroll in the programme. Okay, so some key dates here. So right now we're in the May-June time, which is the CAS document preparation period. So we ask you guys to attend the webinars, read our visa web pages on our website, and begin uploading documents to CAS Shield. On the 5th of July, we have our CAS document deadline, which is the key deadline where you must have provided all of your documents on CAS Shield. Many of you may already have got your CASs by this point, but this is a key deadline to ensure that you have enough time to apply for the visa before you arrive. This does not include A-level students, so very few usually on this program, but some students might be studying the A-levels. These results come out a lot later, so you will have separate deadlines. These deadlines are kind of made around when the final qualifications come out, because you do need your final qualification in order to get the CAS. And Rita will speak a little bit about that later on. The 2nd of August is the CAS issuance deadline. So this is the last date we will issue a CAS, and this is to ensure that everybody is here on time. We want to make sure that everyone makes the most of Welcome Week orientation, so we don't want anyone to be late for the start of the course. So the 2nd of August is the last date that we will issue a CAS for this program. So it's really important that everybody engages as early as possible. In the bottom left-hand corner, you can just see the A-level students only deadlines. So this is due to the results day not being until the 15th of August. It is very late, and students studying the A-level will be required to pay for an expedited visa service to ensure that they can arrive in the UK on time. But these are the deadlines that apply to these students only due to their late results day. Okay, so support from the visa compliance team. So every student will have an assigned visa compliance officer. It might be myself, it might be Rita, or one of our colleagues. You'll be able to message your visa compliance officer directly through our CAS Shield system. So there's a messaging function. We'll be able to get back to your messages. We'll be able to review your documents directly through the system. And this is a great way to communicate with the team, because your visa compliance officer will be the person most familiar with your documentation and your situation. So we just found that it's more personalized, and you're not dealing with different people every time you have a query. You have someone looking after your documents and making sure that they meet requirements. We'll also be running our Q&A sessions following this session throughout the summer. So you'll be able to come and ask your questions, and they'll be less focused on information and more focused on your questions. So giving you the opportunity to ask us things. We'll also be sharing with you our Visa Documents Explained leaflet. So this will go through the documentation requirements that we will discuss today. So again, you'll have on-demand access to those requirements in a digital leaflet. We have visa web pages on the NU London website where you can have a look through, and there's lots of information about the CAS and visa process on there. Once you get your CAS, it will be in an email alongside a visa application and biometric guide. These are specifically tailored to the applicant and where they're applying in the world. So this will be really helpful for you to help you answer every single question step by step as you go through the visa application. And it will help you book and attend your biometrics appointment wherever you are in the world. So now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Rita, and Rita's going to go through the documentation that you need in order to obtain a CAS.
Thanks, Poppy. Could you just go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So in order to obtain a CAS, you will need to provide certain documents, depending on where you're from, but same for majority of the students. So these are your passports, which has to be a valid passport at the time of your visa application, as well as when you enter the UK. It doesn't matter if your passport expires once you arrive in the UK, as long as it's valid when you're making your visa application, it's fine. You could always renew your passport once you've arrived here. We need your qualification. So this needs to be the final and official qualification, like your high school transcript. We can't accept provisional transcripts. These are UKVI rules. We also take English language for, if applicable, so depending on your nationality or where you're applying from. Financial documents, TB certificates, depending on where you're applying from, and as well as translated documents, depending on if they're in English or not. But we'll get into that a bit more. So here, your passport, as I said, it must be valid at the time you plan to enter the UK. So it doesn't need to be valid for any particular period of time after you've arrived, but it just needs to be valid when you make your application and when you enroll. So you can apply for a student visa for the UK in your home country, but you can't apply for the visa if you're living in a different country. If you are applying for your student visa whilst living abroad elsewhere, then you need to show us that you also have right to reside in that country. So the visa that you have to stay in another country that you're not a national of. So, for example, if you are applying for a student visa with your Brazilian passport, but you're living in Canada, then you must show your visa that allows you to stay in Canada as well. Here is an example of the qualifications that we usually receive and what we can accept. So like I said, it needs to be your final high school transcript or a diploma, the official diploma, and it needs to include certain information. So for example, it has to have your name, the title of the award or course that you've completed, the date of the award, and the name of the academic awarding institution. Now, unless the final transcript has all of this, unfortunately, we won't be able to accept it for CAS or visa purposes. So we would have to wait for you to give us the full final official transcript. If your transcript is electronic, then you will need to, your school will need to send us a verified copy of your transcript, and they could do this online. They could send it to us to our email. It's visa@nulondon.ac.uk. But if it is a paper transcript or a paper diploma, then you will need to bring this with you when you enroll and arrive into the UK so that we could verify this at time of enrollment. And if you forget to bring this with you during enrollment, then your enrollment won't be completed, and we will have to ask you to maybe get a family member or someone to post it to us, which could just take time and also delay enrollment. So please, if possible, we could verify it online if it's on an electronic copy, but if it's a paper copy, then please remember to bring it with you when you travel to the UK. The English language test. If you hold a passport from one of the countries in the list below, then you do not need to provide an English language test as part of your visa application. Now, this might apply to majority of you, as most of our students are from the US, but some students who aren't from the US, who aren't on this list, will need to apply and do an English language test and meet certain requirements. We will go into that into the next slide. So here is a list of English language tests that we do accept. So all of the nationalities that weren't on the list on the previous page will need to provide an official English language test showing that you have the required level of English to complete your program of studies, and your test results must be meet or be equivalent to a level B2. So here is a list of the tests that we accept. Majority of the tests we get are from IELTS or TOEFL, Pearson's, IBs, but if you use one of these testing systems, then we can accept it for your English language. So some students are required to take a TB test depending on the country or where they're applying from as part of their visa application. So if you're living in a certain country that requires a TB test and you're coming to the UK for more than 6 months, which our London scholars will be, then you must present a valid medical certificate confirming that you've been tested for a TB. There is a link here, and you can access this link. It does give you a list of countries where, if you are residing in these countries, you will need to provide tests for TB, and as well as it gives you a link of all the UK VI approved testing clinic. On the right hand side here is an example of what the TB test certificate looks like. So it must have your picture, your date you tested, and this must be valid for at least 6 months during the time of your visa application. So translations of documents, we understand that sometimes we get documents that aren't entirely in English, which is fine, but it just means that you have to provide a full official translation of the document. Now, the translation must meet all of the UKVI requirements. So along with the original and the official document, so for example, it might be your high school diploma, we need an English translation, and the translation must confirm, at the bottom, there must be a little confirmation where that confirms the translation has been made by a professional translator or a translation company. It must include confirmation from the translator that the translation is an accurate translation of the original document. It must include the date of the translation, the translator's name, signature, or the full name and signature of the official translation company, and it must include the translator or the company's contact details. We can accept a translated document as long as all of these bullet points are included onto the translated document. The financial documents, here's just a bit of a deep dive of what you need to provide. We need for the tuition fees as well as for the living costs. So how much do you need to show in your bank statement? So you need to show the full amount, which is the first year of tuition fees plus living costs. The full amount needs to be in your bank account for at least 28 consecutive days. It cannot fall below the required amount, even just for a day during this period. So for example, the UKVI living cost is £12,006 plus the first year of your tuition fee. We will minus any deposit that's already been paid at this point, and this gives you the required amount that you need to show in your bank statement held for 28 consecutive days. So the first year tuition fee, we will confirm this soon, but this will be on the enrollment letter, plus the £12,006 living cost, minus any deposits or any fees that you've already paid to Northeastern. This will get deducted off the tuition fees, and this gives you the total required fund. Just to know, we do use O under as our currency converter, as this is what is approved by UKVI. Copy, can we go to the next slide, please? So just a little example. 12,006 is the mandatory UK living cost. You need to show this. The tuition fee here, we've just written 23,000 as an example. Please note this is not the real tuition fees. This is just an example we have given. So the tuition fees plus living costs equals £35,006. We will then deduct any deposit or any extra fees that you've already paid at this point. That will give you the required amount. In this example, 32,006. So £32,006 is what you need to show us in your bank statement that you have held for 28 consecutive days. Right, so we accept personal bank statements or a bank letter. So this could be a savings account, your current account. It could even be a letter from the bank to confirm that you have this much money in your account for 28 days and you can access it immediately. We also accept Sallie Mae loan letters and Northeastern grant or scholarship letters, but this only covers tuition fees. So if you have a scholarship or a grant and it only covers tuition fees, we will require additional financial documents from you to show living costs. So bank statements should contain, it should clearly show your name. So either the student's name or bank statements can be in parents or legal guardians' names. So the person, account holder's name must be visible. It must show the date you printed the statement and the period of the statement. So it must cover the 28-day period. Balance column so that we can see what the daily balance was for the 28 consecutive days, just to make sure that the required funds hasn't dropped below the amount that you need to show at any point during those 28 days. It must show the name and address and the logo of the financial institution. and clearly show that you have held the money for 28 days. The opening and closing balance must be visible. So that's the way we can figure out if the money's been held for 28 days or not. And the closing balance must not be older than 31 days from the day of the online visa application. So your bank statement needs to be dated within the last 31 days. It needs to be a recent valid statement. It also needs to be valid at the time you make your visa application. If you are using multiple bank accounts, that's fine, but it needs to show the same period. It needs to cover the same dates. A bank letter is acceptable from your bank if it confirms that funds have been held in your personal account for 28 consecutive days, and that the letter is no older than 31 days before the date of your application. Your letter from a bank or building society must show, so again, it must show your name, your account number, the date of the letter, the bank's financial institution name and logo, and that you can access the funds at any time. This is really important because this shows us that you can access this fund at the time of if any fees need to be paid and there's no delays in getting access to your funds. That there's enough money in your account to cover your fees and living costs, and that the funds have been held there for 28 days. So you don't necessarily need to give us a full bank statement. It might be easier for you just to get a letter from your bank to say, yes, this person, this name, this account number, dated on this date, has X amount of money in their account and they've held it for 28 days and they can access it immediately. A letter that includes all of these bullet points, that is fine to accept. So it's very, very important that funds must be able to be withdrawn at any time. And we will accept formal bank statements unless issued by the bank. However, we cannot use personal or business loans held in the name of either the students or parents or legal guardians as evidence of money held by you. Business and trust accounts are not acceptable as part of CAS and visa processes. This is UKVI rules. This isn't something that we as the university have decided on. So certain banks, certain types of funds are not accepted, and business and trust accounts are unfortunately one of them. So as previously mentioned, the funds need to be held for 28 consecutive days. So working from the closing end date of the statement, working backwards, you must make sure that for the last 28 days, that money's been in your account and did not drop below the required amount at any given point. If it has, then we would have to either wait a few more days for the funds if you have enough money, but we just need to wait for it to mature in your account until 28 days. This can sometimes cause delays in the process, which is why we, highly advise you to start this process now and make sure you do have enough money in the account so that you've got time, 28 days worth of, it's been held in there for 28 consecutive days. And you must make sure that when you make your online visa application, the bank statement that you submit is within 31 days of its closing date. If it's above 31 days, then that means the bank statement will not be accepted and it could possibly lead to a refusal on your visa application. So it's really important that your bank statement or the bank letter is dated within the last 31 days and clearly shows that the funds have been held for 28 consecutive days. So you may need to submit extra documentations with your financial documents. So for example, if a student does not have the required funds in their own account, but they are using their parents' or legal guardian's bank account, that is fine, but we will need extra documents. So for example, one of them would be a letter of consent from the parent or legal guardian. They will need to write a letter confirming that they've given permission for the student to use their money. The letter must confirm the relationship between the parent or legal guardian as well as the student, and that they've given consent to the student using their funds for their studies in the UK. you will also need to submit, Poppy, I'm not sure if it's on the next slide, as with the letter of consent, you may need, yes, proof of relationship. So this means you will have to send in a birth certificate as well as a letter of consent if using parents or legal guardians' funds. So you will need to submit a birth certificate to show the relationship between the parent and the student, or a certificate of adoption that shows the name of the applicant's parents or legal guardians, or a court letter naming the applicant's legal guardian if one parent has sole responsibility of the child. So equivalent documents will not always be formatted the same way, but there are regional variations in how these documents are presented. And these documents must be in English, or if it's not in English, then we will need a translation, and the translation will need to include all the required bullet points that we previously discussed in the previous slides in order for the translated document as well as the original document to be accepted. So I will pass you back on to Poppy, and she will explain how to make your student visa application online. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. I can see, just having a quick look at the Q&A, just to mention on the back of what Rita said, 529 accounts are one of the biggest questions I'm seeing. 529 accounts can be used towards the tuition fee proportion of the financial evidence, but it cannot be used towards the living costs. So the £12,006 would need to be demonstrated in a separate account. This is, again, the UKVI's rules. But the 529 account, as long as the account holder is either the student or a parent, that would be fine. Just wanted to add that. It's really important that everyone knows that it's only a parent or the student that can demonstrate financial evidence. It cannot be a sibling or a grandparent or anyone else. Thank you, Rita. Right, so making an online student visa application. Again, this is kind of further down the line, so don't worry too much about making notes, as you'll have access to the video after the session. But just to give you an idea of how it all works. So step one, once you've got your CAS, so once you've provided all the documents that Rita spoke about to the team and that they meet the requirements, we will issue you a CAS statement via email. So it will go to your Northeastern email address. So please do, this is where we're going to be communicating everything to students this year. So please check your emails often and every day. So you'll receive an email. It will have instructions about what you need to do and how to access your CAS statement. Your CAS statement will be password protected with your passport number, just to make sure your CAS statement is for you. This will also come with a visa application guide. So as mentioned before, this will go through the questions step by step and how to answer them. It's really important you use the materials that we provide to make sure that you answer everything correctly. If anything is answered incorrectly and we believe that it may cause a problem with your application, you may be required to restart your application again, withdraw your application, and that would mean that you would have to pay again. So it's super important to read the guides that we provide you with. And as an online application, you're able to save your application at any point during the process, log out. If you have any problems, you can get in touch with your visa compliance officer who can help you during the process. And then once you have the answer, you can log back on. So don't worry about getting it perfect in one go. You can log out at any time and log back on during the online visa application process. You'll also get a biometrics appointment guide. So we're going to talk a little bit about how the biometrics process works and who needs to do what, depending on nationalities. But the guide will be tailored to where you're applying from. So if you're applying in the US, it will basically have all the information about biometrics appointments in the US specifically, and it will talk about premium services, expedited services, things that you can do to speed up the process if necessary. So you will need to use these guides when they're sent to you. So it's really, really important that you have a look at them once you get your CAS. Okay, so step 2 will be checking your CAS statement. So you'll basically need to check that all the information is correct. This will go through a triple checking process already, but it's really important that if a student believes there's information on the statement that's not correct, they need to inform us. So commonly one we had previously was tuition fee amount already paid. So we will just put the deposit converted to pounds unless we are shown otherwise that students have made additional payments. So if you do make additional payments to Northeastern towards your tuition fees during the summer, you will need to upload receipts so that we can convert this into pounds and add it to your CAS statement. So that's just an example of something that you could pick up as what you believe to be incorrect. But it's really important that you pick up anything here, but it should all be correct, hopefully already, and as per your passport and course information. So you'll be using this during your visa application. We do ask that you copy and paste the information directly from the CAS statement PDF into your visa application. I think with the CAS number, for example, when there's zeros and the letter O's, it can sometimes not work. But if you copy and paste directly from the CAS statement, everything should match what we've told the government about you. So it's really important that you're paying attention to what is on that CAS statement and using it as part of your application. Next, you will have a look at your visa application guide. This has actually been rebranded, so it will look a lot prettier than the one on the left. So you'll be getting this in your CAS email. We really want students to take your time going through the application form. It's not a rush. Once you're doing it, it doesn't actually take that long to go through it. So give yourself a few hours to sit and go through it gradually with the guide. If you were doing it quickly, it wouldn't take longer than an hour, but I would suggest leaving yourself enough time to go through it, reading it very carefully and making sure you're using the guide and the CAS statement when you're answering every question. As mentioned before, if you're unsure how to answer a question, you're just going to save it, log out of your UKVI account, and you can continue at a later time. It's really important not to guess. We encourage students and families to get in touch with us if there's anything they're worried about. So please don't feel that you have to guess on your visa application. We are here to advise and support you, and we do encourage you to ask questions during this time. But the guide is there to basically help you answer all of those questions step by step. You must, again, use the information from your CAS statement and copy and paste it to make sure we have given the same information to the government as you are giving. So the third step is paying the visa application fee and immigration health surcharge. So these are mandatory payments as part of your application. The application fee is, of course, to submit your application, and the immigration health surcharge is a mandatory payment, which allows you full access to the National Health Service for the duration of your visa. So even if you have health insurance, which is recommended as part of the London Scholars Programme, just in case you might have any personal needs that you would rather have your health insurance cover you for, you are still required to pay for the immigration health surcharge. But it is a fantastic, it's kind of quite useful once you're here, because if you do need to see a doctor, or if you do need to go to the hospital, you can just go straight there and you will have access as part of your visa application. So here are the current fees. These can change at any time. They have recently increased, so we do not expect them to change now. But just to note, these are as of today. The government sometimes does make changes, but these have been changed recently, so we wouldn't expect them to change during the summer. So the application fee is £490 and the immigration health surcharge is £776 per year. So for the London Scholars Programme, this will be the amount that you pay. The total visa application fees are therefore £1,266 British pounds, but this does not include any fees related to your biometrics appointment. So we'll talk a little bit about that shortly, about where you may need to pay additional costs as part of your biometrics appointment, but these are the standard fees that you will pay when making your online application. Once you make your application, you will be prompted to choose a biometric service provider. So again, you'll need to use the guide that we've provided you. Depending where you are in the world, you will use a private service provider, which does biometrics on behalf of the UKVI. So in the US, it's commonly VFS Global and USCIS. These centres are often located in local homeland security centres. There are a lot of centres across the US. You may need to travel slightly, but we found that most people were able to find a centre close to them. Other places in the world will likely use VFS Global again, but also TLS Contact, depending on where you are applying from. But your guide will be tailored to specifically where you've told us you are residing. So which service do I choose? This is really important to mention now. So the standard service, this is basically normal service, no additional cost, is 3 to 4 weeks average processing time, but we have seen it increase slightly in peak time periods. So basically, if you are applying by the end of July, you should be fine to use the standard service. Anyone towards late July, August onwards, I would really recommend paying for an expedited service, so a priority service. The priority service reduces the processing time to usually around 5 working days. It is a higher cost. It does depend on the biometric service provider and where you're located, but we usually see them starting around £500. So bear in mind, this is a big additional cost, but it does reduce it right down to around 5 working days. So if you're planning on travel, sometimes this is really necessary for students and families to do, and it's all about making sure that you can start the course on time. But if you do speak to your visa compliance officer, they can help work out the dates with you, and we're happy to say, you know, you need to make the decision, but it might be really good for you to pay for the expedited service in your situation. So you'll be able to pay for this when booking your biometrics appointment. You'll be able to read what's available in your location. Priority service aren't available everywhere in the world, but most locations they are available, and in the US they are available at most locations. But again, this can change at any time, so this is current information. But last year we saw that there was a lot of availability with priority applications. So just like I mentioned, if you're planning a holiday, please consider choosing priority service, as you won't have access to your passport. So once you go to the appointment, you'll do your fingerprints and you'll get instructions of what to do. We're going to talk about this in a second. I didn't mention, but it's on the screen. This is for non-EU nationals only. EU nationals will go through a separate process that I'll mention in a few slides. So when you go to your biometrics appointment, you'll check your UKVI document checklist. This is what it looks like on screen, and you get this once you submit your application online on your UKVI account. This will tell you what you have to include in your visa application. For many applicants, it might just say your passport, and you might be surprised that it just says your passport and it doesn't say all the other documents that you provided in the CAS process. This is common for some nationals. We have to go through the CAS process to ensure that all of your documents meet requirements, because you can be asked by the UKVI at any time. So even if you didn't get asked for your finances during your application, we must make sure that your finances are completely meeting requirements in order to offer you a CAS. This is an example of the checklist. And for example, this student on screen was just asked for their passport. You only need to provide what's on the checklist. If you provide additional documents that are unnecessary, it can cause delays. But again, if you're not sure, screenshot your checklist and send it over to your VCO, and they can advise you exactly what you need to submit. So you'll attend your biometrics appointment, again, for non-EU nationals only. This is when you're going to lose your passport. So this is a key moment. So you're going to go to the appointment, and for most people, they'll be instructed to mail their passport after the appointment within a time frame. This is usually within 5 working days, and it's really important that you follow the instructions given to you at your biometrics appointment. In some locations around the world, you can hand over your passport at the appointment for processing, but in the US, unless you're paying for a premium service, like the 1 working day top expedited service, most students will have to mail their passport. You'll have full instructions at the biometrics appointment of where that goes. In the US, for example, it's usually to a processing center in New York, and this is where they're going to put the visa sticker on your passport. You'll also be told the type of UPS return label that you need to ship with the passport. This is so that you can track its return. So you will be without your passport while the decision is being made on the visa and while they're sticking the sticker on. So this is really important, again, when considering your travel plans, as you need to know that you'll be without your passport. So again, this is why some students and families do opt for the expedited service so that they get their passport back quicker. Really important not to leave the appointment without the instructions. All the students will be given the instructions, so please make sure you know what you're doing with your passport and documents if required after the appointment. If you don't mail your passport within the time frame, your application could be rejected. So it's just really important that you read all the information given to you. EU nationals have a different process. So if you decide to apply with an EU passport, so you might be a dual national and you decide to use an EU passport, you'll complete your biometrics usually through a UKVI app. So this is dependent that the app works for you and in your location, but EU students tend to be able to use the UKVI app to complete their biometrics. So you won't actually go to an appointment, you will scan your passport and scan your face, and it will do your biometrics online. So currently this is only for EU nationals. You will still have the option to pay for a priority visa service. So if you need, for example, if you're applying quite late in the process, we'd recommend that you do that. If you can't use the app in your location, even if you're an EU national, you would still have to book an in-person biometrics appointment, and we'd be able to provide you a different guide. So if you're an EU national, you will get the app guide, so how to use the app. But obviously, if the app didn't work for you, just get in touch and we can provide you with an in-person appointment guide. We do ask, this is kind of a quick snippet of kind of how CashShield looks. You will get your CashShield invitation soon. No one will have received one yet. The information is being processed and prepared to be ready to send all the information out to you guys. So please keep an eye on your emails and this will be sent soon. But we do ask that you keep your CashShield system updated. So this is what it will look like once you've completed all the documentation part and you've got your CAS. So you need to let us know whether you've applied for your visa, whether you've received your decision. Once you have your sticker in your passport, you'll have to upload a picture of it. So it's really important to stay engaged with us all the way up until you enroll at NU London. Receiving your student visa decision. So on the right, this is what the sticker will look like in your passport. This is called an entry clearance. This is not the visa for the full duration. This is a visa to allow you to enter the UK, and it's a period of 90 days. The earliest it will be valid from is 1 month before the start of the course, so at the beginning of August. So it will say when it's valid from on the sticker, and you'll be able to enter the UK from that date. Once you get into the UK, you will have a visa card if you're a non-EU national, which you'll collect at enrolment. And on your online visa application form, you'll be able to opt for it to be sent directly to the university, and you'll collect that from us at enrolment. So that will be your visa once you're in the UK. So don't panic if it says it's only valid for 90 days. But if you do think there's an error on your visa vignette, please email us and let us know. You'll need to upload it to CashShield anyway, so it will be checked. So for EU nationals, you won't receive a sticker in your passport, you will receive an email entry clearance. So it will tell you from when your visa is valid from. You'll basically be able to generate a share code, which will prove your visa in the UK. So if you got stopped at the border, you'd have the instructions in your email on how to prove your immigration status. Again, you need to send the whole email to the visa compliance team so that we can check it for any errors and make sure you've got the correct visa. Again, you need to make sure you don't travel to the UK until your visa is valid, and we have to check this via flight details. So you'll be required to show us your flight details so we can make sure that you've entered the UK after your visa was valid. Once your visa is valid, you can then travel to London. So thank you all so much. I know there's a lot of information and I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions. There'll be lots of sessions for us to answer your questions, and your visa compliance officer will be working with you directly through CashShield as well. But if you do have any questions in the meantime, you can always contact us, or if you have any questions after this session, please just drop us an email. And I'll hand back to Jake. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Poppy and Rita. Yeah, so this was a great session and a lot of information. So again, please don't feel like you need to have all of the information today, right? You can continue to refer back to this recording, which will be sent to students following the session. And will also be housed in a YouTube playlist, which will have all of our upcoming Q&As. So again, this was primarily about kind of laying the foundation for the visa process. And then if you have additional questions, please check out your application status check portal for upcoming events to register for. Additional Q&As are coming up throughout the summer. And then, of course, please email the email that we see here on the screen, the visa@nulondon.ac.uk email, and then you'll be able to work with your visa compliance officer throughout the summer. So, Poppy, just wanted to see if you had any final thoughts, if you've noticed any questions that popped up, any last things that you want to note before we wrap up.
Yeah, of course, no problem at all. I think a lot of the questions are about travel over the summer and how long the entire process takes. It does all depend on when your qualification's ready, for example, or when you meet all the documentation requirements. So for some students, once they've got their final high school qualification, if their finances are all in order and meet requirements, it could take, 2 weeks max, like a week to 2 weeks from when they get that. But usually our students, once they get their CashShield invitation, you start working through your documents step by step. So don't worry if you haven't got your high school qualification, you can basically start providing us all the other documents, and we can make sure they're all ready so that the last document is your high school qualification. So I know that that's a common one. So people worry about their high school qualification coming out late. Even if it's in June, I know a lot of them come out in June. That's totally fine. You can work with us prior to June and make sure that all your other documents are in perfect condition to be ready to apply for the visa. I think that's probably a big one. I know that travel is always a concern every year, and we're happy to assist you when you're working with your visa compliance officer. It's really common for students to be traveling, but we just need you guys to know that if necessary, you may need to purchase that expedited service just to make sure you're on time. So it will depend when you're traveling, but as I said, anyone kind of applying around the end of July to August time, we would strongly recommend using the expedited service to make sure you don't miss anything. And the main goal is to make sure that you get to make the most of all the activities that will be happening in Welcome Week. I don't know, Rita, if there's anything else you wanted to add there, or if you think covered kind of like the main things.
Yeah, a lot of the questions I've been seeing are also to do with the finances being in the parent's name, if that's allowed. Yes, it can be in the parent's name if a student is using the parent's bank for funds, then you will also need to submit a letter of consent just to say that you're going to sponsor your child's tuition fees. That's fine, they could use your funds, but we also need a birth certificate as well in order to establish the relationship between the parent and child. And 529 accounts can be used, but only for tuition fees. So if you do have a 529 account, we can accept that, and that will cover your tuition fee, but you will need to submit alternative bank statements to show living costs of £12,006. And if the 529 doesn't cover full tuition fees, but only part of it, then your additional bank statement also needs to cover the remainder of the tuition fee as well as living costs. So I think that's one of the main questions we've been getting as well.
Great. Yeah, well, thank you so much. And again, this is definitely not the last opportunity to connect with the visa team. They will be, again, reaching out with additional information. You'll have a visa compliance officer over the course of the summer. We'll have the Q&As coming up over the course of the summer as well. And then we'll also have this recording sent to students, as well as all of the future sessions will be recorded and available for future reference. So again, please don't feel like you need to have everything figured out today. Certainly not the expectation. Yeah, but we wanted to thank everybody for your attention today. We know there was a lot of information. Thank you to Poppy and Rita for your great work today. Really appreciate it. And we will be in touch with everybody soon. Please, again, be sure to be checking your Northeastern email regularly, daily, because all of that information will be coming in. And if you're having any issues or if anything comes up, you can always email londonscholars@northeastern.edu to get in touch with the program contact as well. But with that, unless Poppy or Rita have anything else, I think we are all set for today. Thank you all.